Hello, boys and girls. Greg from the Scary Spirits podcast here to make you another cocktail. This week's cocktail is the Sweet Caroline Tiki Drink. And of course, it is the featured cocktail in this week's episode. We're going to start a glass with ice. To that, we're going to add 1 ounce of Midori or melon liqueur. 1 ounce. Next, 1 ounce amaretto liqueur. Di Serono. I do like me some Di Serono. Need to get some more Di Serono. 1 ounce. Next, 1 ounce sour mix. Lastly, we fill with orange juice. That's kind of separating, kind of cool. That almost looks good as a layered drink. But we stir. And we garnish with an orange slice and a cherry. There you have it, boys and girls. The Sweet Caroline Tiki Drink. That's pretty good. Thanks for watching, boys and girls. Hope you enjoy the podcast. See ya.
Do you like to dance on Sundays? Well, if you do, you're in luck. You've just greatly increased your chances of meeting and becoming a sidekick to Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, the subject and movie title of this week's episode of the Scary Spirits podcast. But be careful, you might just find him mesmerizing. Speaking of mesmerizing, just about everyone in this film gets the old vampire hypnosis razzmatazz. But back to dancing. Maybe you should do that on Saturdays, just to be safe. Cheers!
Welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hi, I'm Greg.
Hey, I'm Karen.
And welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast, the podcast that combines the two very different yet highly compatible worlds of scary films and alcoholic spirits.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I'm doing great. How are you, Greg?
I'm good, Karen.
That's nice.
Not quite great, but I'm good.
Well, not all of us can be great.
That's true. Karen, I believe this week's film was my choice, was it? Was it not?
It was. You want to tell everybody what you put us through this week?
I'm not sure I like your tone, Karen.
You're not gonna.
The film I've chosen this week is a Hammer production, Karen, from 1974. You remember 1974?
Not really.
We were just babes. A Hammer film called Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter.
That's the one. You want to tell everybody why you picked this?
I picked this, Karen, because this episode goes live on April the 5th, and this film was released on April the 7th. So happy anniversary, Captain Kronos.
You do like a good tie-in.
I do. I just can't help myself, Karen.
I know, it's like a compulsion.
49 years ago, this film was released.
Like a blink of an eye.
Seems like yesterday. I do have a cocktail as well, Karen.
As you should.
Perhaps you'll enjoy the cocktail more than you enjoyed the film.
I do believe that's true.
Cocktail I have chosen is the Sweet Caroline Tiki Drink, Karen.
Now that one's not obvious, so you're going to have to explain it.
Well, Karen, as you know, one of the stars of this film is the lovely and talented Caroline Munro, and I chose it just in her honor, Karen, to celebrate Caroline Munro.
What part does she play? Which lovely lady is she?
She's Carla,
Oh, okay.
the main lovely lady.
Well, there were a couple in there.
Would you like to know how to make the Sweet Caroline Tiki Drink, Karen?
Of course.
So we're going to need 1 ounce of Midori or melon liqueur. I didn't have Midori, but I had melon liqueur. 1 ounce of amaretto liqueur, or as I like to call it, Di Serono. And 1 ounce sour mix. And orange juice. So we're going to take a large glass and fill it with ice, Karen. We're going to pour all those ingredients over the ice. 1 ounce Midori, 1 ounce amaretto, 1 ounce sour mix, and then we fill the glass with orange juice. And then we stir, garnish with an orange slice and a cherry, and then enjoy.
That's the tiki part.
Mm-hmm.
You do look like you need to be next to the pool.
It's tropical.
Mm-hmm.
Should we give our friends and listeners time to make their own, Karen?
Of course we should.
Hold on. And we're back.
Yes, we are.
Karen, might you have a brief synopsis for us?
Of course I do.
I can always count on you, Karen.
Would you like to hear it?
Absolutely, Karen. Please, tell me a story.
Debonair supernatural expert Captain Kronos and his hunchbacked assistant, Grost, meet their match when they encounter a village where vampires have been stealing the vitality of young women, leaving them elderly and decrepit. Armed with his sword and formidable deductive reasoning, Kronos begins to solve the macabre mystery with evidence pointing to the aristocratic Lady Durward and her family as prime suspects.
Thank you, Karen, for that accurate synopsis.
It's a good one.
It is. Kind of spoilerish, but...
Couple of too many adjectives in there, but okay.
I liked elderly and decrepit.
Yes. I feel seen.
All right, Karen, are we ready to get into it? Anything else we need to cover?
No, did you watch it on Amazon?
I did, Karen. Did you?
Yes, I did.
Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter from 1974. Rated R. There were no warnings, Karen.
No warnings.
It wasn't much to warn about, really.
No, smoking.
Yes, there was smoking. Smoking and drinking.
Yeah.
A little bit of blood. No nudity to speak of.
Implied only.
Yeah.
I think there was, but it was artfully done.
Yes, it was.
Much to your disappointment, I'm sure.
I can talk about that later.
Okay.
I wasn't really surprised. Film opens, Karen, and we see
one girl brushing another girl's hair.
Okay, this is how many horror films I've watched, okay? So when it opens, there's a blonde girl looking into a mirror, and the reflection we see is a brunette girl. I was like, is this some sort of teleportation thing? What's happening here? Is she speaking to a supernatural being? I couldn't figure it out until they pulled back and showed that one girl was brushing another girl's hair and she was behind her.
Yeah.
I didn't see.
It's a pretty good shot now that you're talking about it.
It is, but I thought, why is she seeing someone different in the reflection? I thought, oh, this is going to be an interesting one.
So the brunette girl, is that what you called her? Was she a brunette or brown hair?
I said brunette, I think, but
okay, same thing.
I don't know what I said now.
She goes off to pick flowers to put into the blonde girl's hair.
And they're young. They look like peasant girls. And they're in the woods.
Well, the blonde hair girl's dressed pretty nicely.
Oh, you think the other one's her servant, maybe?
I don't know. She's almost dressed in like a sailor dress or some shit.
But they're in the middle of the woods.
They are. And the blonde-haired girl is looking in her mirror, brushing her own hair now because she doesn't have the other girl to do it for her. And she sees a hooded figure behind her in the mirror. She turns around and she seems pleased to see the person.
Yes, she does.
But the figure picks her up and we see blood drip on the mirror.
We should also mention, and I'm sure you noticed, the blonde girl was wearing a cross.
Yes, she was. Next, we see a man on horseback riding through the lane there in the woods. And he calls to the girl whose name must be Anne, because that's what he calls her.
Yes.
She appears to be in shock, I wrote, Karen.
That she does.
But the man sees the little blonde girl leaning against a tree. He walks up to her and she turns and we see that she has turned elderly and decrepit, Karen.
Yes, she has. When we say little girl, we should say these are late teens. They're not young. They're not,
yes.
10.
They are developed or developing.
When he says little girl, he means they're supposed to be teens. They look mid-20s.
Yeah.
As per usual in these films, but
then we have credits, Karen. While the credits play, we see a man on horseback and another man in a horse-drawn carriage riding through the countryside, through the hills and valleys and the woods.
And riding and riding and riding. So I thought, how many miles can you ride a horse in a day? You want to guess? If they're walking, what would you think? Just walking.
I'm going to say 25, Karen.
Did you look it up?
No.
It's 25 to 35 miles per day. Excellent. When it's traveling at a trot, which these were not, it's about 20 miles. And cantering is about 10 to 15 miles per hour, which means a very fit horse can travel about 7 miles. However, the average horse will not be able to travel nearly as far. I mean, it's a long sequence of them riding and riding and riding.
Well, it's just for the credits.
Yeah, it's a good use for the credits, but...
Then they stop, and we get a good shot of Captain Kronos and his logo on his saddle, Karen. Then they ride on, and we see a girl in stocks, Karen.
A young woman.
Yes, a young woman.
Well, I don't want anyone to be confused.
Correct. And Captain Kronos asks her what she did to get put in that predicament. And she said she danced on a Sunday. And I wrote, she appears to have been pelted with tomatoes, Karen.
She does appear to have been pelted with tomatoes. She's very beautiful.
She is. Captain Kronos frees her by taking out his sword and cutting whatever kept it
lock
closed. Yeah, was it a lock?
I think so.
That's pretty good.
That shows you that he's got a damn good sword.
Yeah. Did that with one swing of his sword. And I wrote that this is Caroline Munro, Karen.
And he says, we're traveling east. And she says, that'll do.
Yeah,
and she runs and jumps in the wagon.
Yeah, she kisses his hand and then gets in the wagon.
We should say, again, this was the middle of nowhere. It's the woods, pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like she was outside a house. She wasn't in the middle of town.
She wasn't.
Just in the woods.
Yeah. And we cut to a birthday party. A girl who is Isabella who is Anne's sister, it's her birthday, and her father gives her her mother's bracelet. Apparently, her mother's passed away, and it was her last wish to give that bracelet to Isabella, whatever.
And it's a silver bracelet that locks on your wrist. She won't be able to get it off.
Yeah, and she says she wants to run off and show it to Petra. Father says, that's fine, but be home by night, Paul.
Which is weird because Anne just saw this horrible thing happen to her friend in the woods. And now they're just going to let Isabella run off into the woods.
And as she's running through the woods, we see the reflection of a hooded figure in the stream, Karen. And we notice the figure walking. And as they walk by like flowers, the flowers die.
Yes, they do.
The figure approaches Isabella. She screams. And she's wearing a cross as well, too, I wrote.
Yes, she is.
Next, we see Captain Kronos, Carla, and I call him the professor the whole time. Make camp. And Carla seems to have washed her hair.
But Kronos is smoking a cigarette.
No, he's got one in his mouth. He's not smoking it.
Well, they do smoke many. What are they? Marlboro 400s? Those things are like 6 inches long. Is there something? Are they a type of cigarette that was common back then? Do you know anything about them?
Throughout the film, I called them backwoods cigars. Is what I called them. They used to be called. There was a brand. It's probably still out there called Backwoods Smokes, and they're like that. They're like Clint Eastwood cigars, is what we called them too. You know what I mean? Clint Eastwood would smoke those cigars in all of his Western, the thin, in the spaghetti Westerns.
Yeah.
They make something called cigarellos too, which I guess I could have called them as well. But they're kind of like a cross between a cigar and a cigarette.
Well, they're popular. When they're at camp, Carla starts asking the professor, who is this guy? Is he a king or something? And the professor says, kind of, because she wants to know why they're doing all the work and he's just sitting there going to get some rest. So, she wants to know what's up. Why is he not doing any of the work at the camp? And the professor says he does important work. He needs to rest and keep his strength up. And then they say that there's only blankets enough for 2, which the professor has a blanket that looks like it's king size. It's so big. And they're like, you're on your own. Too bad for you. Neither one of them gives her a blanket or anything else.
She asks, where should I sleep? And he says, wherever you want.
Yeah, but we don't have a blanket for you.
Nope. So cut back to the cabin where the birthday party was. And it's past dark now. And Isabella stumbles in. She collapses. She is elderly and decrepit as well, Karen. She gone.
And she's still wearing the bracelet, so they do know it's her.
She is. Next, Kronos and the others arrive in town. A question mark I wrote. And he yells for someone named Marcus.
I think it's just
his
Dr. Marcus's compound.
Palatial estate.
Kinda, yeah. But there's a servant. Marcus's servant immediately does not like Kronos.
Nope.
Because he doesn't. He says, he lives here. Who are you? And Kronos doesn't even respond to him, just screams for Marcus again.
Marcus comes out and I wrote, they seem to be friends.
Yes, they do.
So they go inside and Marcus tells Kronos about the young girls turning elderly and decrepit, Karen. The professor tells them that it's vampires. The girls were not drained of blood, but they were drained of youth, life itself. Professor seems to know a lot about vampires, Karen.
Yes, there are many species of vampires. The methods and motives vary in 100 different ways. So this is new.
Yes.
We haven't really heard this before. And even a stake through the heart doesn't always destroy them. So he says they can be destroyed by hanging, decapitation, fire or water, or other means. And
when he says by other means, he taps on a cannon sitting there, a small cannon.
Yes.
And Marcus tells them that both the girls were wearing crosses. Professor says it only protects those who truly believe. And Marcus says, well, these girls were devout Christians.
We find out there's not a lot of believers in this village. Or
But the professor says the girls may have been hypnotized, and in that state, they would not be able to believe. They would be under the mind control of the vampire.
Yes.
Marcus is skeptical. Kronos says, if you don't believe, then why did you send for us?
Well, and he says, you've already reached the same conclusion because you've sent for us. So he knows.
Then we see Isabella's sister at her grave. And I wrote here, they have nice makeup for the Middle Ages or wherever in the hell this takes place.
Yes, they have very skinny eyebrows and and very long eyelashes.
Yeah, Isabella's sister, she's got some nice makeup going on. I think she's got eyeshadow and everything. Rouge. She's looking pretty good. Then she goes into a church, I guess, to pray, and we see a shadow of a cross, and it moves, Karen.
Well, it's interesting because you see a shadow of a cross on the wall, which is nice. It's nice shadow work.
It is.
And I said, that's not the shadow of the cross, because they pull back and then they show a metal cross, and you can tell the one they show you is ornate and has delicate edges and all of that, but the cross on the wall looks like two railroad ties or something, not delicate at all. And I said, well, that must be a mistake. No.
Yes, the cross pieces start moving down, right?
Yes, they do.
So I'm starting to think, is that a person standing like they're a cross? They're awful skinny and stick-like if it is, but whatever. Then a glass of wine is knocked over on the altar there, and she screams. And we don't see anything. Is there blood splatter in this part?
Well, later there is on the bell, but not then. It's just the...
Okay. Maybe the red wine is supposed to signify blood being spilled.
I guess.
Next, we see Kronos taking a sponge bath, Karen.
Shower by water pump is what I said, yeah. And he has a good scar.
He does. And Carla says that she is staying with him if he will have her. And he says, oh, I will have you.
Yes, he does. But back to the scar. It almost looks like he was...
Looks like he's had a kidney transplant or something.
It almost looks like he was cut in two.
Right.
So it goes almost all the way around his midsection.
Next, the church bell rings, Karen.
Which is like the warning bell, I think, because for some reason they run off towards it.
Kronos and the others rush toward the church. Professor tells Carla they are vampire hunters. This is when she finds out what they do. They go to the church and they find the girl drained of her life there inside the church. Again, she is elderly and decrepit, Karen, and dead.
How many young women are there in this village? Because in less than a day, 3 are gone.
Probably a lot more than there are old women, Karen, because I bet the life expectancy wasn't very long.
And it's interesting that it can only be women.
That is true.
It's not the men, the young men.
And we cut to a cemetery. A man gets out of a carriage and puts a wreath on a grave. The grave marker says, Hagen, 9th Lord of Durward, greatest swordsman of his time. His sword now sleeps. And we learn this guy's name is Paul, and he apparently knows Dr. Marcus. Apparently, his father was this Hagen guy, and he died while being treated by Dr. Marcus. Paul's mother still holds a grudge, apparently.
Yes, she will not forgive him. She's in the carriage also. But they do say, Dr. Marcus said he died from plague. It wasn't like he could do anything for him.
Yeah.
But the mother still doesn't forgive him, and he tries to give his respects to the mother, but the mother won't see him.
But he does see that she appears to be very old and decrepit, Karen.
Yes, she does.
Marcus
and he thinks she's sick. Yeah.
He asks if he can examine her, but Paul refuses.
He says, good day.
Good day. I said good day.
And he gets back in the carriage. He actually says good day, gets into the carriage.
Next, we see Professor digging a hole. He pulls a dead bullfrog from his hat, puts it in a box, and then he and Carla bury it.
Yeah, they call them toads later, but they're definitely bullfrogs.
It's true. He actually even says after they bury it, that's one toad in a hole.
Yep.
He tells Carla to mark it, and Carla ties a red ribbon around a branch to mark the spot. And in the background, we see many ribbons tied on branches the same way.
Yes.
Next, we see Kronos smoking a backwoods cigar, Karen.
Shirtless. Yep.
So Kronos pulls his sword. Marcus wonders why Kronos is not doing more to hunt the vampire. Kronos says he never goes into battle unprepared. And he's smoking in the stable, all around the hay and straw and everything, right?
Yes.
I guess that's where
But he
staying.
says, yes, he is in the stable. He says there's a time to think, a time to plan, and a time to act. And the time to act will come soon enough. And then Dr. Marcus admires his stitching on Kronos. He's the one who put him back together, I guess. He says his needlework is holding up.
Then Carla enters, Karen.
Yes, and the professor and Marcus go to play chess and drink wine. They're no longer needed.
No. And Carla disrobes, Karen.
Yeah, it was pretty in the shadows. So there are shadows covering her.
Yes, I wrote lots of shadows hiding Carla's features. I wrote.
Yes. I think it's supposed to be artsy, though, because she's in the shadows and then she looks over and all you see is smoke lit up. So she knows where he is because he's smoking. And then they do some ridiculous shots of their eyes and mouths. It was silly.
Cut to the next day, apparently, because it's daylight.
Well, they kissy face and they're naked.
Yeah, they are, but you don't see anything.
Well, you can tell they're naked, though.
Yeah. Next day, apparently, because it's daylight out, or I'm assuming it's daylight. I don't think their filters were that bad. A girl screams, and she's being manhandled by a boy. But she seems to enjoy it, and she gives in.
She relents.
They kissy face. He's got her pinned up against a tree.
And she looks about 30.
She doesn't look that old.
I thought she did.
But the girl thinks, or the young lady thinks she sees someone stalking around in the woods who is very old. And then she says she has to go. She has to go home. And her male friend there offers to walk her home. She says it's not necessary. It's only a short walk. He says he will stay and watch as she leaves the woods to be sure she gets through the woods.
Yeah, and she doesn't want her father to see him. So he tries to do the right thing multiple times, saying, let me walk you home. I don't know why he couldn't walk her 10 feet from her yard if the woods backs up on her yard, but whatever. Especially with all kinds of young women being killed in the forest.
Yes, he even mentions that.
Exactly.
So then she walks down into like a little gully there, and she disappears for a minute, for a few seconds. Then she walks back up, and she collapses.
Yes.
Boy runs after her. He finds her and sees that she is elderly and decrepit, Karen.
Yes, she is. She looked like a man when she was old and decrepit with a 5 o'clock shadow. Did you think she looked like a man?
No.
Like maybe I thought maybe they put in like a stunt double who was a man.
When the girls are old and decrepit, they are, I think, played by older women, right? I don't think it's makeup.
Oh, okay.
Especially with her.
I thought she looked like a man with a mustache and everything. But, we all get there.
If we're lucky, Karen.
True.
So next we cut back to Kronos and his professor buddy there. And Professor tells Kronos that there is another girl's been attacked, and this time they have an eyewitness. Cut to them talking to the boy, and he explains what happened. He says he did not see anyone, but she says she did see someone elderly. Kronos digs up a toad that they buried earlier.
Yeah.
A box with a toad in it. Pulls it out, is dead. And we learn that apparently if a vampire walks past the grave of a dead toad, the toad will come to life.
Which is weird because when the vampire walked over the flowers died. But This is the opposite. So it must be a toad thing. I don't know.
He says it's
folklore or something, but still.
But the third toad he digs up is alive, Karen.
So he's trying to find out which direction the vampire went in.
Right.
So he kind of put the toads in a circle, and then whichever way the vampire went, that toad would be alive because they walked over it or went over it. And they do find one alive. So they know which direction the vampire left by, I guess, or came in. I don't know how you know the difference, but.
So they head that direction and they find tracks to a carriage with 4 horses. Kronos and the professor begin following the tracks.
So that's all new. We've never heard of that before, that toads would come alive. I don't know if that's really a folklore thing or.
Don't know. But Kronos tells the others that they are looking for someone very young. The tracks end just short of a village. Well, Marcus is with them, and he seems not to want to go for some reason.
I think he thinks it's the Durwards.
Yeah, so he says he will stay behind and look around up there in the woods. But he rides, and we see him looking at a castle in the distance. Cut to the pub. A man walks in saying that someone has been asking if there has been a coach there within the last few hours, and
it's Marcus's servant.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's Marcus's servant is going in, and he says Kronos is offering money to anyone who can help him find a carriage or wagon.
He says that the man is offering a golden guinea for information. Yes. A man at the end of the bar there asks a girl, I guess the barmaid, if Caro is around. Just then he comes down the stairs.
The man asking about him is kind of aristocratic looking, like he has money.
Yeah, he's got one of them tri-cornered hats and a doily around his neck or something.
Not an Elizabethan collar, but still. No.
So Caro comes down the stairs and he lights his strike anywhere match and lights his backwoods cigar.
He has 2 young men with him too.
Yes.
So it looked like they could have been his sons.
Could have been.
And a young lady follows them down and she looks a little disheveled.
She asks for her money. Apparently she's a hooker, Karen. Caro gives her some money and then
not as much as he promised.
So he throws another coin into a spittoon, and one of the other men spit in it just as she's going to reach in and grab her coin. Then they all laugh.
Yeah, so they're not nice.
Yes. A man sitting in the bar, though, is not laughing, and
he's not amused.
No, and Caro is not happy. So he pulls his sword on him and forces him to laugh and tells him to run away. Then the aristocratic man at the end of the bar offers Caro money for something. We don't know what.
And did you see the blindfolded woman in the booth?
Yeah, twice.
Who's she?
She is credited as blind girl.
But
I don't know. I didn't know either. I'm like, okay.
I thought maybe something was going to come up with her later, and it never does.
I thought maybe is she like blind but has like telekinesis or something?
Yeah, is she a seer? The seers are always blind, right? So yeah. I thought, okay, this might be interesting. Nope,
never see her again.
Nope.
Come back to Marcus. He ties his horse and enters a house.
He rings the bell, but he just lets himself in.
Yeah, it's the same house, I believe, he saw at a distance earlier, or we did. Walks in and Paul is there. So this must be the Durward estate. Dr. Marcus tells Paul he would like to talk to his mother. Paul refuses and offers Marcus brandy.
Yeah, Dr. Marcus just says, I was just going by in the neighborhood. Thought I'd come in and give my regards to your mother. Do you think he has a thing for Sarah, the sister? Maybe they were dating or something?
I kind of got that feeling later, but not at this point. And Marcus notices that Paul is reading a book called Witchcraft and Necromancy. Paul says it was his father's.
And he's settling his library or something, he says.
Paul's sister arrives, Sarah.
And makes fun of Paul, basically.
And as she arrives, ominous music plays, I wrote. And then there's some eye play between her and the doctor as they talk. They do kind of like verbal jabbing kind of.
Well, she's like, why, Dr. Marcus, why are you studying me so closely?
Do you think I am ill? The doctor leaves, but I wrote, I think he is suspicious.
Yes.
Next, the bell rings inside their estate there, and apparently their mother.
The servant bell. So someone's ringing for service.
Yeah. Lady Durward.
Why do they make these names so difficult to pronounce?
Oh, no.
Durward.
Paul goes up to see her, and she wants to know who just called. Paul tells her it was Dr. Marcus, and he was just passing by.
And the mother looks like crap. She looks like a corpse, basically. And her lips don't move when she talks.
No, they do not.
At all.
Karen.
At all.
I almost made a note. Is she wearing a mask?
It looks like a mask.
Seems to have eye holes in it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like her eyelids don't match the rest of her face to me. But anyway.
But I thought it was just bad,
right?
Bad makeup.
That's where I originally thought too. Like, is she wearing a mask? But the mother says, well, the road we're on doesn't lead anywhere. And Paul says, yes, I know. Got back to the pub. Kronos and the professor enter. Kronos asks the bartender about anyone with carriages. Caro and the other two men are sitting there in the bar, and they begin teasing the professor about his humpback, because he's like a hunchback, like Quasimodo, Karen.
Yeah, hold on one second.
Are you going to tell us some more information about Quasimodo?
Well, not Quasimodo, but kyphosis is what he has, which is a round back or a hunchback. And it's a spinal disorder that occurs when the upper back becomes abnormally rounded forward. Kyphosis is a common condition that affects more than 3 million people per year in the United States. So it happens to a lot of older women with osteoporosis and things. You'll see that hunch in their back.
Right.
But it can be a genetic condition, but it also can just be way worse in some people. And there are ways to treat it now. But if it's really bad, probably like his was, he should have been in pain, because they treat it with painkillers. If it's not terrible, you can do stretches and things to help alleviate it and correct it, but sometimes it can't be corrected. And I would assume that's his condition.
Thank you, Dr. Karen.
I hope I pronounced it correctly. I'm not sure.
But Kronos is not pleased with their teasing.
No, and they also throw out some, only soldiers come through here, deserters bragging about their wins in war. And, so because they can tell he's got a coat that shows he's a captain. So they're poking the bear, as we like to say.
And Kronos begins insulting the men by calling them names, just as they had called his friend, the professor, names. And Caro draws his sword. And then Kronos draws his, and in the flash of a blade, Karen, blood flies.
Yep.
And all three men drop.
First, the two young ones on either side of the bully.
Caro.
Yeah, Caro, drop. Their throats are slit. And then dramatically, Caro falls to the ground.
Stumbles around the bar and then falls.
And then they just leave him there.
Yep. And then Kronos turns to the bartender and says, you still haven't answered my question.
Yeah. So any carriages or wagons?
And the bartender says they have seen no wagons or coaches. No, sir, not at all. And we cut to Marcus riding through the woods. Thunder rolls, Karen.
But it's a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah.
With blue skies and fluffy white clouds.
He sees a hooded figure and he approaches.
Well, it calls to him.
He calls by a woman's name.
Well, it calls Marcus, Dr. Marcus, but it's a female voice that calls to him. And he thinks it's Sarah. He says, Sarah? Because he's got a thing for Sarah, I think.
Gotcha. So he approaches the figure, stops and starts screaming.
There's like a bunch of cuts really quickly.
Yeah.
There's trees, there's water, there's trees, there's water.
Wind stops and starts, and the stream stops and starts flowing. Yeah. And there's lightning. And then we see blood on Marcus's glove. And apparently it's dripping from his lip.
Yes. Which
I didn't catch at first. They
don't really show that, but yes. Because I said blood is dripping on him. Where is it from?
Yeah, I thought, is that dripping from a tree above him? Where's that coming from? I didn't know. So then we see Kronos, Carla, and the professor. Professor is feeling sad because the men made fun of him in the bar.
Yes, they're back at Marcus's house.
Kronos tells the professor that the men were paid to pick a fight with them and kill them.
Yes, which I didn't put together until he said it.
Yeah, me either.
I didn't know why they got the money from the rich guy, but he was obviously working for someone who wanted them not to be involved anymore. But I didn't get that at all.
I didn't either. So then Marcus enters. Kronos wants to know where he's been. He says he went to the Durwards, but saw nothing of a coach. And Kronos, being shirtless again, as he is, gets up and turns, and we see he has leeches on his back. So he's doing some bloodletting to calm his nerves, Karen.
I think we've talked about leeches before, but we're going to talk about them again.
Okay.
So does bloodletting with leeches work?
Of course, Karen.
Because leeches produce an anticoagulant and literally suck blood from the surface of skin. They are often used to revive delicate veins and improve blood flow following a tissue reattachment procedure. Are leeches still used in medical procedures today? What do you think?
Probably somewhere.
Since the time of ancient Egypt, leeches have been used in medicine to treat nervous system abnormalities, dental problems, skin diseases, and infection. Today, they're mostly used in plastic surgery and other microsurgery. This is because leeches secrete peptides and proteins that work to prevent blood clots. So they are, disgustingly enough. Ugh, that really gets to me. I just do not like them. They really attach on there, and you gotta. Ugh, it's gross.
I wouldn't know. Never had one on me.
Ugh.
I believe we talked about you playing in the creeks, Karen.
Yep. And there never seems to be just one. And they can get big. I should have looked that up. I wonder how big the biggest leech is, because engorged, they call them. Anyway, proceed. Sorry.
So they say they're going to go hunting tomorrow.
But Marcus is acting weird. Don't you think he's acting weird?
He is acting weird.
Yeah, he's acting suspicious.
And I even thought right now is he looking a little younger? That's what I thought. Thought his hair wasn't as gray or something. But anyway, so I wrote they're going to go hunting for snakes, ? Because Kronos pulls like a bowl of sand with worms in it or something and says they're going to go looking for something like this, only larger.
Yeah, that was weird too. I thought maybe it was something like a toad thing that I didn't know about.
Yeah, me too.
And then again, nothing happens.
No.
So again, it's like a red herring that we don't know what that means. Greg and I are both so excited that you're listening to the Scary Spirits podcast, and we would love to hear from you. Do you have a movie suggestion for us? Or possibly a favorite drink you'd like us to try? Or maybe you just want to say hi. If so, you can email us at info@scaryspirits.com. Thank you so much for your support. Now back to the show.
So they're making a tripwire with bells and red ribbon.
Yeah. Red ribbon in the forest. They're making a tripwire. Like no one's going to notice it.
Tying it from bush to bush, tree to tree, all around. So if anyone enters and moves a bush out of their way, it'll ding or ring.
And no one's going to notice the red ribbon or the sound of the bells. It's ridiculous.
But it does go off, and Kronos goes to investigate, and we see a red-headed girl pulling up her stocking, Karen.
I said he watches her with impure thoughts.
The girl walks away carrying a basket, and then a bat attacks her right in the face.
Yep.
Kronos and the others run to her, and she's gone, and all of her eggs are broken and bloody, Karen. She was carrying eggs, apparently.
Yeah, which is weird. I don't know why the bat attacked all this. We've not seen bats before, and all of a sudden, and it's the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even dusk when a bat would be out, but that was bizarre too.
Got back to the Durward's house. Sarah enters. She must have been out because she's got her cloak on and her cane. And Paul and her talk about their mother.
Who's
Paul
not
says,
eating.
No, she refuses to eat and lies there as if she were already dead. And Paul urges his sister, Sarah, to go see her, but she says she cannot. It just reminds her of what she will become.
Exactly.
Paul says it will not happen to us. We are Durwards, and we are known for our youth. She is not a Durward by birth.
Just by marriage.
Yes. Cut back to Marcus's stable, and Carla appears to be naked with a bloody lip, Aaron.
Yes, she does.
She tells Kronos that he was rough with her.
And she wants to know why he's so bitter.
Yes. Kronos tells her that when he returned from battle, he found his sister and mother were vampires. He has bite marks on his neck, and he was forced to kill them both.
By driving stakes through their hearts.
As you do.
Which is important to know in a little while, I think.
Cut to Marcus shaving. And I wrote, he appears to be younger.
I didn't notice until he starts to say,
yeah, he freaks
look at my
out.
face. Look at my face.
He runs to the stable and tells Kronos, look at my face. And then he begins to grow fangs. And Kronos knocks him out.
With one punch.
Yep. Kronos drags him into the house and tells the professor to get a strong rope. They tie Marcus to a chair. They say he appears to have been bitten on the mouth. Marcus is afraid that it is he who killed the girl in the woods, the redhead girl.
Yeah, they don't make it clear if he thinks it was him that did the one or all of them. And why would he have changed into a bat? It's weird.
Yeah, because he did come out of the brush there after the girl was attacked. But anyway, he asks Kronos to kill him.
He begs him.
So the professor grabs a stake from the wagon.
Very fancy and ornate.
It is. Very fancy stake. And the professor holds it to Marcus's heart, and Kronos hammers it through him.
But first, Kronos is having a hard time doing this. He's like, oh, I don't want to. He might recover. And I'm thinking, he just told Carla he staked his mother and his sister. And now he's having trouble staking this guy? I mean, it didn't make any sense to me. But he does stake him.
He does. Professor pulls the stake from his heart, but there's no blood on it. And the wound heals instantly.
Yeah, it didn't work.
So next they make a noose and they hang Marcus while he is still tied to the chair.
Yeah.
They use their block and tackle, Karen, and pull him
Yes,
up.
they do. My dad would be proud. Well, of the block and tackle, not the hanging part. They use shadow work to show him come off the ground. We don't even see that. We only see the shadow.
Correct.
We see his feet off the floor, but that's it.
They put him down and Marcus still does not die. Next, the professor lights what appears to be some sort of candle. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, they're just going to burn him in the middle of the house?
From the fire and hold it towards Marcus. And Marcus fights, and Kronos slams his hand into his chest to hold him or something, and Marcus's hair turns gray, and suddenly he is old and decrepit. He gone. And the professor wonders, well, how did he die? Because the flame never touched him. Then Kronos finds that the steel cross Marcus wore around his neck was pushed into his chest when Kronos hit him with his hand. Marcus's handyman watches from the window, I wrote.
Yeah, so again, this is new. Steel, not silver, is what can kill him because they say it's steel, the cross.
And next we see the townsfolk coming to pay their respects to Marcus, and they believe that Kronos and the professor killed him.
So he's lying on the table and he has coins on his eyes, which I know we've talked about before, but I actually found a little bit of new information. So you know that they put the coin in the mouth is for the ferryman to take you across the river. And it's only one coin. The idea of two coins actually came from living heroes who went into the underworld and then came back out. One coin was the charge for a one-way passage, but for someone who wanted to go back, an extra coin was needed. So sometimes you'll see that in movies and things. If you're hoping that the person's going to figure out a way to come back, they're going to need, coins for both directions, for passage for both ways. Which, okay, but the more practical reason that people do it, put the coins on both eyes, is to keep the eyes closed and stop them from springing open from muscular contraction. And this says something that if it happened in the midst of a wake might have been deeply disturbing to all concerned. So it's just to keep your eyes closed. But he's laying there with coins covering each eye.
Got to Kronos and the professor and Carla in the cemetery, pulling up an iron cross from the ground. Angry townsfolk arrive with their torches and pitchforks.
Yes, because Dr. Marcus's servant has whipped them up into mob mentality because he does think that Kronos and the professor grabbed his boss, took him in the house, and killed him in cold blood. That's what he saw from the window. So now he's got about, 6 men with him, you think?
Yeah, and they all have swords. Yeah.
Yes.
So Kronos pulls his sword. He fights with the townsfolk and disarms them all without killing them.
Yes, you see their swords fly into the air further away from them.
Kronos and the professor and Carla ride off in the coach. Back at Marcus's, the professor has taken the steel cross from the cemetery and is forging a sword. Karen, we have a montage of making a sword.
Yeah, and what's Kronos doing?
He keeps his face hooded for some reason.
Is he meditating or something? He's got like his hands holding the napkin over his
Burlap
face.
or whatever.
It's weird.
It is weird.
The whole time. So we keep seeing more and more montages of the professor forging this sword. And every time we flash back to Kronos, he's doing you can see it's like a handkerchief because as he's breathing, it's going in and out of his mouth. And sometimes Carla's sleeping next to him. Sometimes she's not. So it's a long time he's doing this.
Lightning crashes and we see a hooded figure, I wrote. And we're back at Isabella's house. Isabella's sister and brother. That must be Vanda and Barton, maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's their names in the credits. They can't sleep. And they wish father was there.
She's warming up some milk so that, they can maybe go to sleep.
Next, we see their father run over by a coach, ? I wrote.
Yes, it was very quick.
A hooded figure enters the cabin.
The door swings open. It was dramatic.
Yeah, blood splatters on a lamp. And Kronos finds the father, run over by a coach. His arm is amputated. He gone.
Yeah, it wasn't a great effect, but it was an interesting concept.
Yeah. And Kronos hears a coach, and he runs after it. He runs to the cabin, enters, and he finds the girl and her brother. They are corpses and rats are eating them.
Already in that, 3 minutes. But it did look like the young man was old and decrepit also, not just the girl.
Right. Cut to professor's putting a dead toad in a box again.
He's hiding in a tree. Yeah.
And he throws it by the lane as the coach passes by. He runs back out and opens the box, and the toad is alive. So they know the vampire's in the coach. Next, we see Sarah at the cemetery putting flowers on her father's grave. Kronos arrives, and they talk about how good of a swordsman her father was.
So Kronos should just wear a cape because he never puts his arms in his jacket, which I get, for maneuverability and such, but it looks kind of silly the whole time.
That was fine.
He should just have a cape.
I don't think I noticed it until...
it distracted me the whole time.
Right now, or a little before this. But then Paul calls to his sister before Kronos can kiss her hand. Because they introduce each other and he says, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware I was in the presence of
Lady Durward.
Lady Durward.
But they do talk about the swordsmanship and how her father never met his match. So that'll come into play later.
Professor comes out behind the monument and they hypothesize about whether she could be the vampire. Back at the stable.
They're preparing for battle.
Yeah, I wrote they appear to be performing some kind of ritual on Kronos. I wasn't sure what was going on at first.
Yeah, they're putting double crosses on his neck with lipstick or something. What, or is that blood? I don't know.
I don't know.
They put 2 crosses on the back of his neck. He's wearing a cross. They're putting garlic flowers on his sleeves.
Yeah. And at one point he tells Carla, "You'll be the bait. Is that all right?" And she says, "Yeah." She says she's fine with that. So apparently they have a plan.
Yes, they do.
And Kronos says it's time to kill the vampire. And then the professor puts a mirrored sleeve on the sword? Question mark, I wrote.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either.
Got back to the Durwards, and Paul is offering his mother a drink. And someone's at the door ringing the bell.
Like a trick-or-treater waiting for candy. Ding, 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 ding.
And the servant is nowhere to be found, so...
We see him being dragged off.
That's right. So Paul opens the door, and Carla is there. And as he opens the door, she begins to collapse, and he catches her and carries her into the house. Paul puts her on the couch and slaps her face to wake her up. Then they give her a drink. Probably brandy, Karen.
I would guess so.
And Carla tells them that she ran away from home because her father was going to force her into marrying a man she did not love. And she asks, "Please, sir, if I can just spend the night." And of course, Paul and Sarah say, "Yeah, it's fine." And they offer her a room. But Carla says, no, she's already been asked too much of them, and she would prefer just to sleep on the couch by the fire. So Paul and Sarah go upstairs, and Sarah blows out the candles as she stares at Carla, and she tells her to sleep well. Outside, Kronos throws his batarang up to a ledge on the house.
That's what I said. Uses his batarang and bat rope.
I wrote, inside, someone is walking along the landing, at least because I think we're seeing their view, looking down on the couch that Carla is on. And then the mother's bell begins to ring, but a hand grabs it and keeps it from ringing. And a shadow approaches Carla. And here I wrote nice camera work. Because we pan down, right? And we see underneath the couch, and we see what appear to be female shoes, I wrote.
Yes.
Walking towards Carla from under the couch. Carla looks to see who it is, and she is startled and then hypnotized.
She smiles.
And I said, it's a blonde. I could tell it's a blonde woman with fangs.
The teeth come out.
Then we see Sarah scream on the stairs. So now we know it ain't Sarah.
Yeah, and Paul comes down.
They were leading us that
her.
way.
Yes, they were. And even Paul, maybe, but Paul comes up behind her. So we know it's not him either.
And then we cut to Kronos, and he's jumping through a window.
The skylight of the castle.
Yes, he lands on the mother's bed. And there's a mask there, Karen.
Yes, there is.
Paul and Sarah are surprised to see their mother and her youthful appearance. She tells them she is a Karnstein, Karen, and she has worked 7 years to learn how to make herself stay young.
So that goes back to the movies we've watched before, right?
Yeah, so that goes back to the Vampire Lovers with Ingrid Pitt, the Karnsteins, which was part 1 of the Karnstein trilogy, followed by Lust for a Vampire and Twins of Evil, which we will get to at some point, Karen.
But this isn't part of the trilogy. They're just throwing the name. They're name dropping here.
Yeah, they're name dropping. Exactly.
So she's not a Durward. She's a Karnstein.
Karnstein, yeah. And she tells Paul and Sarah that she plans to raise their father from the dead as well.
I think she already has.
Well, yeah, what she says,
He's never dead, just sleeping.
Yeah. The
you
children
shall
say
see
no.
for yourself. Yeah.
Children say, no, he died from the plague. And mother says, no, he was only sleeping. See for yourself.
Yes.
A hooded figure enters. And Lady Durward says she brought him back from the dead. Then she commands Paul and Sarah to come to her.
And they're mesmerized.
They obey. She tells them they will awake later and remember nothing.
And then lots of eyeballs.
Then Hagen and Lady Durward walk toward Carla. Lady Durward tells Hagen that Carla's youth will be his. She tells him to take her. He bares his fangs, and just then Kronos jumps on him and pushes him away.
He's looking a little worse for wear, too. He looks like maybe he
had the plague.
Yeah, so his face is not perfect. He's got plague face.
He does. He could use some Stridex.
Something.
So then the mother, or Lady Durward, tries to hypnotize Kronos, but he raises his sword, and the mirrored part that they put on it casts the reflection back to her eyes. So all she sees is her eyes, her own eyes. So she hypnotizes herself, apparently, Karen.
Yes, which is weird because this is against other vampire lore where you wouldn't be able to see the vampire.
True.
But yes, she hypnotizes herself.
Then Hagen rises, and he and Kronos sword fight.
Because he's a master swordsman. Well, they
Yes.
both are.
Yeah.
So this is supposed to be highly contentious because you don't know who's going to be the better swordsman. And they fight for a while.
They do.
So the kids were hypnotized by the mom. The
Yes.
mom also hypnotized Carla, and
Mhm.
she hypnotized herself.
Yep. So we're all just standing there.
Yes, they're all just standing there, not moving, staring off into space while the sword fight happens.
Hypnotized. Yep. Then Kronos, in the midst of fighting, slices Hagen's hand, and he sees that he bleeds. And Kronos says, "Yes, you bleed. This is God's blade." So they fight. Hagen manages to disarm Kronos. Then Hagen slices Kronos' hand, and Kronos goes to hide behind Sarah. So they're kind of fighting around Sarah.
And Paul. Paul's there too.
Yeah.
They're kind of fighting in between them.
But Kronos is able to grab a sword that is hanging on the wall, and they continue fighting. But it's not God's blade, Karen.
It is not. So he stabs him.
He does. He runs him through, but it doesn't kill Hagen. He comes after him. Then the professor jumps down from the landing, grabs the steel sword, and throws it to Kronos. And Kronos slits Hagen's throat, and he turns elderly and decrepit and dies. Then we cut to Lady Durward, and she has a tear in one eye and a splattering of blood dripping down from the other.
I think it's a blood tear, isn't it? Oh, I thought she was crying.
No, it's blood from the cut.
Okay. It didn't look right, but I got you now. Okay.
She approaches Kronos, and he runs her through. Then the others fall out of their trance. Lady Durward turns elderly and decrepit and collapses and dies. She and Hagen turn to skeletons. Kronos drops his sword, and he and the professor leave. Don't even say bye or nothing. Say,
well, why would you leave the sword? It's God's sword.
It's not his usual sword. I agree. It might come in handy in the future if they run into another one of these vampires.
Exactly. Why would he have to do another montage of making another sword when they have a perfectly good God sword right there?
Cut to the next day, I assume. Kronos says he must leave and fight evil wherever it may be. But he tells Carla.
He's ditching Carla.
But he tells her during the nights he will think of her.
The lonely nights.
Yes.
Only the lonely nights.
Only the lonely nights, yeah.
Yeah.
And Carla says, "And I of you." Kronos and the professor ride off through the valley. Credits, the end. All right, Karen. Anything you really enjoyed about this film or pleasantly surprised by?
I like when they kind of come up with new lore, stuff that it's not just rehashing all the old stuff. So the dead toads was an interesting touch. The sets, of course, are always fantastic. The blood's terrible, but the sets were good. They did send you again. Do you think it's this person? Do you think it's this person? Do you think it's this person? I like that because I did not think it was the mother because I thought the mask was just bad special effects for the time. I thought, oh, that's horrible. So I was not prepared for her to be the bad guy. I was thinking I thought it would be Paul because they were trying to lead us to Sarah. So I thought it would be Paul. So that was good. What about you? What did you like?
I agree. I did like the twists and turns and led you this way and that. I was kind of on Sarah most of the time, but I kind of knew it was the mother already anyway, you know?
From reading
Again,
about it or just
yeah.
a hunch? Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you read the synopsis, you know it's Lady Durward, right?
Well, the
Durward.
daughter is Lady
That's
Durward
true.
also.
That's true.
He calls her Lady Durward.
He does. As always, the sets, costuming, all that shit's great in Hammer films. I thought there was some nice camera work, some nice shadow work.
There was some nice shadow work.
Nice cinematography, I guess. Did you realize the voice of Captain Kronos was voiced by another actor?
No.
I didn't either until afterwards when I looked at the credits online and stuff, and there's Julian Holloway is credited as the voice of Captain Kronos.
Something seemed weird, but that's not what I thought it was. He seemed stiff, or I don't know, just not.
I knew he had a German name, but I didn't know. But so apparently maybe his accent was too heavy or something, and
That would have been a good thing in this, though.
Maybe. I thought Caroline Munro was great.
Of course. She is very pretty.
Oh, she's smoking. I didn't think the acting was terrible. Even Kronos, like you said, he seemed stiff, but
he was probably the worst one.
The guy who played Marcus was good. The guy who played the Professor was good.
Sarah was good.
We had sequel potential there, Karen. This almost felt like it could have been. No, when they rode off, they're going to go right off and fight more vampires.
Oh, I was thinking the kids. There was that book, Witchcraft and Necromancy, in the library.
They could have gone that direction,
and
too.
They left the sword, so they can't kill him if they. I was thinking along those lines. So yes, I should have said yes. There is multiple sequel potentials. So we could have gone in. You would have gone in one direction. I would have gone in the other.
Yeah, I would have preferred that he took Carla with him for the sequel, but other than that, or maybe we have a sequel about Carla there and Marcus's. I guess she's taking over Marcus's place now, right?
Yeah, it's all hers. Well, the servant is somewhere off, but they should have stayed together. But that's not how it works. It's like James Bond or something.
I think they did that thinking they would do more Captain Kronos films. And that would be, one less person to explain why they're not there anymore or something. Anything else you liked?
Not really.
Okay. Anything you didn't like, Karen?
I think a big part of my problem is I didn't like Captain Kronos. I thought he was
handsome.
I didn't even think he was handsome.
Okay.
He was stiff, and I know it's a very 70s thing, but it's still off-putting to me now. It's like the James Bond or where they're irresistible and then they just leave. So they're kind of jerks, and he did not appeal to me at all. And there were just so many red herring things that just didn't go anywhere. The blind woman in the bar, the witchcraft book, what was the other thing we talked about that didn't go anywhere?
Snakes,
the worms.
Worms or whatever.
Snakes. Just like loose ends that just nothing happened with the information, which I don't know. That was kind of weird. It seemed almost campy in a way. And I don't know if it was supposed to be or not. But it did seem like he was going to be some sort of superhero where they would have multiple films.
Mm-hmm.
And is he a comic book character or anything? Because doesn't it seem like it would be?
Mm-hmm. I think they did do something after the film as far as books or whatever.
What about you? Did you not like anything?
Same stuff that, the blind girl didn't bother me,
Well, not only did she look out of place and nothing happened with her, she was dressed in like a gown in the tavern. It was just so bizarre. She looked like she belonged at a cotillion or something, and she was the
like
tavern.
In a black gown, right?
Yeah, she was in like a satin shiny gown or something. I was
thinking almost like Puritan thing, but
I thought it was shiny.
It may have been. We only see 2 shots of her taking 2 drinks, right?
And her blindfold looks like it's satin also. It was just weird.
Yeah, the worm thing. Yeah, like I said, I didn't know that didn't go anywhere. I'm not sure what that was all about.
But like I said, they did come up with some interesting new lore, which they must have done some research into some folklore with the toads. So, that was kind of cool because we watch a lot of vampire movies and it's the same stuff over and over. So for them to come up with and say, well, staking doesn't always work. I mean, that's the first time we've ever heard that. And when they stake him and he's like, nope, still here, try something else.
Yeah, they did do a comic books after this. Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter.
After this isn't
way
based
after
on...
this.
Really?
Yeah, like in 2017, 2018, they had a series of comic books.
Because this seems like it would have... This is so kind of campy that I thought it came from a comic book.
And there was some like in 76 and 77 as well. Like they had a comic book called The House of Hammer, I guess, which had parts of this Captain Kronos in it probably or something. So, and it's actually a sequel, I guess, to this kind of.
Oh, we could see if Carla shows up. I mean, you'd think they'd want to keep her. She jumped right in. She helped to bury the toads. She wasn't a damsel in distress, which I liked also. He didn't have to keep saving her over and over and over, which sometimes happens.
Yeah, she went on to do another Hammer film, and then she went on to do other. She was in like The Spy Who Loved Me and other things as well. So she did all right. Anything else, Karen, that you hated?
No.
Okay. What kind of cocktail rating you want to give this film, Karen?
I'd say it's a 4.
Knew you were going to say that.
Well, we talked about the good points, but there were just too many. It's almost like they said, well, let's throw a blind girl in the pub. And like did they cut the worms out or did they? And then tying bright red ribbons with bells in the woods and thinking no one's going to see them or hear them. Like if you were walking in the woods and you moved a branch and a bunch of bells rang, wouldn't you think, I wonder what that was? But no, the girl just goes about, I don't know. It seemed incongruent to me. It just seemed like the central story was there and then they just started throwing, like they could have expanded a little more on who hired the guys to try to kill him. And they try once and it's over in 10 seconds. I know we're supposed to go, oh, he's so great with the swords, but that could have been fleshed out a little more. It was just glossed over. I didn't even know that that's what they were hired to do until he said it in the next scene. Like, oh, I completely missed that. Not that I'm always 100% on, but it wasn't obvious that that's what was happening. Or they could have filmed the dude saying, when Kronos comes in here, I want you to kill him. I've been hired by someone very important to make this happen. I don't know. It was just too much of that kind of stuff.
I liked it more than you did. I'd have given it 3.5 if we could. But another thing I really liked that I didn't mention is the whole swashbuckling nature of it. I like that shit.
Yeah.
The swords, fights, and all that stuff. All right, we'll give it 4 cocktails, Karen.
My youngest took fencing for a little while. It's interesting.
Would you like to hear some reviews from the time, Karen?
Ooh, Critics Corner. What do we got? Who do they agree with, you or me?
First one I have is from Variety, December 31st, 1973. It came out in 74. But anyway, you must have got an advance of it. Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, as played by Horst Janssen. That's a good name, Horst.
Yeah.
Horst Janssen is a prototype blonde Germanic super stud caped like an operetta leading man. Accompanied by faithful friend John Cater playing a hunchback professor, Kronos solves a vampire mystery with a lot of swash and buckle. Story is unusual in that the vampire, who turns out to be an elderly woman, her ladyship in the castle halfway up the next hill, sucks blood to get a youthful appearance. Being a new horror character, Kronos naturally has a groupie in tow, Caroline Munro, who caters to his earthier needs between random jousts with bad guys and bad vampires. Ian Hendry has one scene as a heavy, that's the guy who plays Caro, got up like an aging leather gang leader solely for the purpose of Kronos showing off his swordsmanship. That's all there is to it. The next one, Karen, I have is the New York Times from October 31st, 1974. So this was released, as a lot of these Hammer films were at the time, as a double feature. So it was Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, and Frankenstein, the Monster from Hell. So the critic writes, of the two, Captain Kronos is easily the more foolish and the more elaborately produced. The film introduces into movie vampire lore a Superman of fine Nordic good looks, a slight German accent, and a vow to go wherever evil is to be fought, even though he didn't voice it. This guy says he has a German accent, but whatever. Goes on to say, I have a personal preference for conventional vampire movies in which every vampire shrinks before the sign of the cross, goes invisible in mirrors, and can be efficiently dispatched with a stake through the heart. In this film, there are, to quote the screenplay, as many varieties of vampires as beast of prey. It takes all of Kronos' energies before he finally traps the fiends who have been ravaging a magnificent English countryside, stripping pretty young girls of their youth and leaving them in heaps of wrinkled flesh, washed up at 15 or 16. The acting is terrible. And that's the end of that one. And it goes on to talk about the Frankenstein movie, but yeah.
I'd say that one agrees with me.
I'd say they both do.
I don't want to use the word boring or even slow. I don't know what it was. I kind of kept waiting for something to happen. And we never really saw anything happen.
I thought there was plenty of shit happening. All the swords play and everything.
I guess you liked that more than I did. I was like, yeah. Okay, moving on. Because you know he's going to win.
All right. What'd you think of my cocktail?
I like the cocktail.
As I thought. You like it better than the movie.
Yes, I do. Put that recipe in the recipe den and we'll pull it up when we're on the lanai at your house in Florida someday.
Yeah, it's good.
That's a good one for poolside.
And as I was making it, I noticed it layered really well. You could almost not stir it, and it looks good. It's like yellow, green, yellow. It's pretty neat. But it says stir, so I did.
Because you're a rule follower.
Yeah, but if you watch the YouTube video, you can see me make the drink, and you'll see that it's layered. And I even comment about how it would make a good layered drink. But it says stir. So that's what I did.
Gotta ruin it.
All right, Karen, anything we learned today?
What did we learn? We learned about how far a horse can go in a day. We learned about hunchbacks. We learned about leeches, coins on the eyes. I think that's it. New vampire lore, if you're interested.
Yes. I do have more comments about Caroline Munro.
Oh, do tell. What do you got?
Because I did say I would talk about that, why, shadows covered her, features and whatnot.
Yes.
She refused to do nude scenes. That was mentioned in the Hammer Glamour book, Karen, I read that you got me. But she refused to do nude scenes. I'm sure that's why she was covered in shadow.
That they still used her, because there seem to be many actresses who were willing to do that in Hammer films. I'm wondering why they chose to cast her. I mean, she's gorgeous. She's stunning, really, yeah. Especially for that era. But there were plenty of women who could have filled that role. I mean, she's an okay actress, but she wasn't blowing everybody else out of the water or anything, No,
but she was a popular English model.
Oh, so, okay.
So the English public would have known her. So They would have seen her on billboards everywhere.
So they might go see the movie.
Yeah.
Just because she's in it.
Possibly. Well, she did films before this, and she did more films after this. So
I'm not, I'm just curious because most Hammer models, maybe not all. I don't know. It does seem to be kind of prevalent, though, where you see at least something.
yes, we at least have two breasts.
Usually.
All right. Next film, Karen. I believe it's your choice.
It is.
And what film have you chosen for us?
We're going to watch the 1922 film Nosferatu.
Have you seen that film before, Karen?
I have not.
I am not either.
And that's exactly why we're going to watch it, because it seems like something we should have seen by now. So there's no tie-in to any dates or anything. It's just a lot of the vampire films, because vampires are cool, that we've watched. I think there was vampire film before this one, but this is the one that most people say was the beginning of vampire films. So that's why I kind of want to watch it.
This is a silent film, boys and girls, if you're not aware. 1922. Starring Max Schreck, I believe.
Yes.
Do we have a cocktail, Karen?
We do.
Okay. What would that be?
It's a branded cocktail. It's Tito's Terrortini. But I'm sure you can use any vodka. Tito's is a vodka.
Tito's Terrortini.
It's a Terrortini.
All right. I assume we're going to need vodka.
You're going to need 1.5 ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of lemon juice, 3/4 ounces of simple syrup, and 1/2 ounce of pomegranate juice, and 1 maraschino cherry.
Okay. I believe I have all of those ingredients, Karen.
It's pretty cool looking. If you make it right, there's just a small glob of red in the bottom of the martini glass. So you add the vodka, lemon juice, and syrup to the shaker, shake it, strain it into a martini glass, and then you pour the pomegranate juice over the back of a spoon, which I can never do, and drop the cherry in. Terrortini. Right. I just like the name of it. Terrortini.
All right, Karen, anyone you need to thank this week?
Well, Greg, I am going to thank our listener. There's a lot of podcasts out there. Thank you for spending time with us. Who do you need to thank, Greg?
Karen, I am once again going to thank the people of the Lone Star State, the Republic of Texas. And, of course, the band Verse 13 for providing all the music in the Scary Spirits podcast.
The music definitely makes the podcast better.
Anything else, Karen?
Please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to the Scary Spirits podcast, where the movies might be iffy, but the drinks are always solid. We would love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast, or go to our website, scaryspirits.com. And if you want the direct line, email us at info@scaryspirits.com. If you really want to help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And remember, always drink responsibly. See you next week.